Okay, so it's been around 2 months since Triple H has taken on the role of head of creative of WWE. Do I think he's doing a good job? Yeah, he's doing all right, isn't he? And I want to get into 5 things that I think he's put in place that have made this last 2 months a little bit more enjoyable than the last couple of years. So, the first one, it's the low-hanging fruit, isn't it? But it's the thing that really would get on people's nerves, especially when people would come up to the main roster, or they've been on the main roster for a while, and Vince was like, you know what? Having a first name and a last name is far too complicated. I know everyone in the real world has that, but no, not here. Far too complicated, because you as a fan are too stupid to remember 2 names. That, of course, Triple H is not that way. So he's given people back their first name. So Tommaso Ciampa, for example, is now back to just being Tommaso Ciampa. We've got Riddle as Matt Riddle. And we've got Austin Theory as Austin Theory. The way it kind of should be. And that's one of those little things that is just a nice nod to wrestling fans, isn't it? If you, like me, have been watching WWE for many years, you know, constantly would get annoyed when you'd hear Ali is now Ali instead of Mustafa Ali, for example. So just having Triple H come in straight off the bat, what can I do that's a little bit easier to get fans to know times are going to be changing under my watch? And this was that. And it's been great so far. Long may that continue. People can have more than one name, guys. Unless you're called Cher, and you're just going to be called Cher. Okay, the next one, number 4. So, salvaging gimmicks. Now, this is a bit of a strange one if you think about it, because realistically, you should be able to have a gimmick continue until it burns out, and you have to kind of change that gimmick entirely. But the problem that you had in the past with WWE is you'd have certain people have a gimmick, they'd have an idea for the gimmick, the performer would be on board with it, they'd be trying to take it in a certain direction, and Vince would have had a mid-afternoon nap, woken up and had his Dr. Pepper and thought, you know what, I'm going to change this. I'm going to have to change what we're doing with this. And you're going to do this tonight because, you know, it's an hour before the show. I'm going to have to quickly change this. And it wouldn't be in line with what that character was, or what that character was about, and what that gimmick was. And then it becomes really hard to invest in these characters because they don't feel real, because what they're doing isn't justified. It isn't how they would act. So seeing the likes of Shayna Baszler just being a badass again and running through some people and being, you know, the scary MMA fighter, great. That's what she's supposed to be. Maybe we don't need her kicking everyone's ass inside of the Elimination Chamber. Personally, I thought that was pretty good. But now what we're getting is that strong definition of characters. Kevin Owens is the prize fighter. He's not been a champion for years, right? He's there to fight every night, get his money, fight Owens, fight. And that's who the character is. And now he's been able to do that and show that through his promo work, through the matches he's put in, through the circumstances he's put in. And the big one here is from someone who has returned, and Karrion Kross. So obviously when he got brought up to the main roster, Vince had a bit of a different vision for what he was. I don't know, some sort of shredder gimmick. I'm not quite sure what it was supposed to be. Let's just have Jeff Hardy roll him up inside of a minute. That wasn't a character that had been built in NXT. That wasn't a character that had kind of been built a little bit on Impact as well before coming over to NXT. It wasn't where we were hoping to go with it. The time, the effort that had been put into it, that wasn't the character that we got on the main roster. Triple H instantly goes, look, come back, let's do right by you. Let's have you run this the way it should be run. You should be a psychopathic kind of murderous sort of guy. And that's what we're getting. Great to see. It allows you to invest in the characters more when they're true to the gimmick, to the character. And without that, we don't have anything. People just do stuff for the sake of doing stuff, and then you just don't really care. It lessens that emotional investment as a fan, and to see Triple H doing it right, double thumbs up from me. And then number 3, we mentioned it there, Karrion Kross getting back into the ring in WWE in the main roster. The exciting returns that Triple H has had and been able to bring back in. So we've had like Johnny Gargano, Dakota Kai, Karrion Kross, among many others, and I think there'll be more to come. You listen to the news, you can tell there's a sense of people going to jump ship from AEW, people going to come back from Impact. Is the Fiend going to come back? There's all sorts of these things on the table, because now with Triple H in charge, it's a different regime, it's a different time, it's a different flavour of ice cream. If you haven't heard me talk about the flavour of ice cream, go and check out my other video about NXT changing from 2.0 to going to black and gold. I'll link it above. Go and check that out and you'll understand what the reference is there. But it's great having all these people come back. This is what wrestling was like back in the day. People would move around a lot more. There was more opportunities for the wrestlers, which means more opportunities for the fans to see some great work. And that, at the end of the day, is what I want to see. Great wrestling by great wrestlers with great storylines that make me care. Okay, so number 2, and this is a big one for me. This is the evolution or re-establishing of the mid-card title scene. So back in the day when I first kind of got into wrestling, I know it's cliche because it's the working man's title, if you like. The IC Championship was the title that I wanted to win as a kid. It wasn't the world title. I obviously have a world title, but the IC Championship was the one that I wanted. That Intercontinental title was the one that I'd buy from the shop, and it was the one that I'd wear around the house. And when I was jumping off ladders into swimming pools, don't try this at home, kids, that was the title that I was raising above my head, because that was the one that I wanted, because that was the one that meant something. That was the one where the best matches were happening, right? And it's been that way, and it had been that way for many years. That was the work rate title. It meant a lot. People in those matches put on fantastic matches. And over the years, that's diminished. You've had some good runs with these mid-card titles. John Cena tried to elevate it. You've had Seth Rollins try to elevate it. You've even had The Miz try and elevate it. But it never really went anywhere. It would last a little bit, and it would be one guy really pushing hard for it, and it would just drop off again. So they never really meant anything. Triple H, within the course of 2 weeks, makes you care again. Gunther versus Sheamus for the IC title, rated 5 stars by Dave Meltzer. A modern day classic, you could say. It's one of those matches that I'm like, to non-wrestling fans, I'm like, do you want to just see 2 big lumps of meat slapping shit out of each other? Go and watch it and see what you think. Brilliant match. And it was more of a brilliant match because it had stakes, because it was for the IC title and it meant something. And allowing them to put on that match for the mid-card title, give them that space to breathe, only elevates the title. People don't beat the shit out of each other like that unless they want to win that belt. And that's what we got there. And we see it with Bobby Lashley with the US title, elevating that and making it mean something. And that's the way it should be, because you elevate your mid-card, eventually they come up the ladder, they become 2 top guys and go on to fight for the world title. That's how it should be. And you should care. Those titles do mean something in the grand scheme of things. And Triple H understands that. He gets it. He gets what the fans want to see from that. And long may that continue. And now that brings me on to the number 1 thing that I think we've got out of Triple H's run. It's not necessarily something he's implemented, but it's a byproduct of him being there and being in charge of creative and the new regime, as it were. And that's hope. For a long time, there was always a discourse online around Vince, and things will get better when Vince goes, but he's probably going to be there till he's about 129. So we're kind of just going to go along this ride. We'll get some cool bits along the way, despite of himself. Things won't necessarily be the way we want, and that's fine. But, we'll get certain bits here. But, while Vince is there, this is the way it's going to be. So we'll just have to accept some of his quirks, because he's a bit of a crazy old man now. And we'll have to just accept that and go along this ride. Whereas that's not the case. Through things that we won't get into here for obvious reasons, Triple H is now in charge of the creative. And you can see, just by those 4 things I've laid out there, within 2 months he's already put his stamp on it. And there's other things coming, like War Games. I'm excited to see what he does in War Games. Getting rid of T-shirt time with Survivor Series because of that. There's so many things that he's already doing. And yes, a lot of these things have come from his time in NXT, the black and gold. But that time, I love that time. So for me, I'm very excited. I've got a lot of hope for the future of WWE. It's a massive thing anyway, yeah, and it's constantly growing. You look at the numbers that they do and the revenue shares and all this, it's worth loads, right? $1 million business. It's not in any trouble. But as a fan, someone who likes to be emotionally invested in his wrestling, who wants to be drawn in and live the storylines with these characters and go on these journeys with them, to have them culminate at big events all around the world, that sense of total immersion in a product just wasn't there for me in WWE. And I was getting it a lot in AEW, but it's nice to have that hope that WWE can be what we kind of all want it to be, right? We still like certain parts of the sport entertainment brand. We like the work rate wrestling that we know a lot of these superstars can deliver on. And we like the production. Like WrestleMania is an event like no other. I know I sound like I'm a shield for WWE here, but it is. It's massive scale, production value, the effort that goes into that is second to none, right? But sometimes the stories going into those big shows and into those big things just didn't have the heart that it did once. Now is that because Vince is a little bit crazy and always has been? Yeah, getting him older and not in touch with necessarily what the fans want to see, and he will push what he wants to do. And now Triple H is kind of the era of the stuff that my generation probably want to see, and a lot of younger fans want to see, and hopefully you want to see. And hope is a great thing in all regards of life. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I know how I've enjoyed making it. So if you want to see more of this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to German Suplex.